Hey guys, my name is Ethan Frazier, and I'm a career coach here with OSU CEAT Career Services, and today I'm going to talk to you about interviews. So today we're going to go over some general tips that apply to all different types of interviews you can have. We're going to go over the specific types of interviews because there's some unique tips for each different style of interview that you can encounter, and then we're going to say what you should do after the interview. So first, we're going to start with some general tips of stuff to do to prepare for interviews and what to do during interviews. So the first and foremost thing you want to do is research the company. If you've gotten an interview, nothing is more embarrassing than to go into an interview and know nothing about what you're applying for or who you're going to work for. So you want to be able to research the company, and this allows you the opportunity to ask specific questions to the person that is interviewing you later on. Secondly, you want to dress for success. This one, you have to kind of know the vibe of the place that you're applying for. Most professional engineering places, this would be a suit for both men and women. But if you're applying for a more casual place, you may be able to do it, but better be on the safe side and always dress in a suit. Another important thing is to know your why. Why do you want to work there? This can be important because, once again, like researching the company, if a company asks why they should hire you or why you want to work there, you should be able to answer that instantly. You need to think about why you're a good fit for this position and why they should hire you. And along with this, you need to be personable. This shows in any type of interview that they're not just going to hire you for your technical skills, but they can hire you for your soft skills as well. This shows that you'll be able to communicate effectively with people if throughout your interview you can be clear and concise with your answers and just show that you have those soft skills intact. Next, you need to know your rights during all interviews. There are some questions that they are not allowed to ask you. And this typically has to do anything with discrimination between race, religion, or your sexuality. These questions are not allowed to be asked. And if you ever feel uncomfortable with a question, you can refuse to answer it. And if it's too bad, you can report them after the fact. Another important thing to do is to practice. Interviews can be nerve-wracking, but the more you practice, the better you'll get. CEAT Services and OSU offers mock interviews to let you practice these and to get feedback for interviews before they happen. With practice, this also means that you can look up a list of commonly asked questions and practice your responses before going to the interview. That way, you can have a better response time for some of your questions. And finally, I can't stress this enough, do not chew gum. Many people do it because it helps with their nerves, but nothing can be more annoying to a recruiter or most people in general than if you're smacking your gum or if you have to swallow every 3 seconds when you're doing a response and you can't spit out what you're saying. This becomes a little bit more important in some interviews than others, and I'll mention it when, but just a good rule of thumb is to never chew gum. So now we're going to go to the specific type of interviews. I'm going to talk about 4 different types today. I'm going to talk about traditional in-person interviews, virtual interviews, and that can include through Zoom or if you're recording yourself. I'm going to talk about phone interviews and then the not as frequent non-traditional interviews. So there's different types of interviews and they all come with its own unique set of challenges. So first we're going to start off with traditional in-person interviews. And there are 4 tips that I would give to anyone to help give a better impression in their traditional interviews. So starting off, handshakes are great. Remain, keep good eye contact, have good posture, and to be calm. So starting off with a handshake, this can be the first impression that many people have of you. It's probably the first time you're meeting the employer face to face for the first time. And I've learned throughout my years that many people don't know how to give a good handshake and have never really thought about it. So to have a good handshake, you need it to be firm. You don't want to have your hand completely limp in their hand, and you don't want to be crushing their hand because that's not comfortable for anyone. And you want your handshake to be palm to palm. Don't barely grasp their fingers and don't almost grab their wrist. Palm to palm is a good position that's comfortable for everyone. And also another thing that I've learned is some people like to cup their hands and to try to show that they're not nervous if their hands are sweating. You just kind of have to bite the bullet and go in for a good palm to palm handshake to show that your confidence and just to give a good first impression. You should also leave your handshake to 2 or 3 shakes. If you only do 1 shake, it could be awkward because they might still be holding onto your hand, or if you do it too much longer than that, it can be an uncomfortable amount of time. And also, along with your handshake, you should have a small greeting like, hello, it's nice to meet you, or thank you for this opportunity. Small talk like that that helps get the initial conversation starters out of the way and you guys can get straight into the interview. The next thing that I'm going to talk about during an interview is eye contact. So eye contact can be a really important thing because this is how you show that you're being attentive to the person. If you're not paying attention to the interviewer and you're looking around, it can show that you're not really focusing on them or that you're not really interested in what they have to potentially offer you. So this is how you show that you're being attentive, is through keeping your eye contact. And with this, you need to keep it natural and direct. You don't have to stare them down, but keep it comfortable. Keep eye contact as they're talking and as you're talking. And with that being said, it's okay to take small breaks during breaks in the discussion or thinking. When the topic is beginning to change, it's okay to shift your eyesight for a couple seconds to take a break before the conversation starts back up. It's also okay and a natural response for when you're thinking to either look off to the side or look up. There's nothing wrong with that, but make sure when you're ready to answer a question, you look back into the person who asked you eyes before delivering. Next, I'm going to talk about good body posture, because good body posture is something that can also portray confidence. So a thing that you're going to want to for sure do is to sit up straight. Slouching can just show that you're anxious, or even some people take it as you're just undisciplined enough to make yourself sit up straight. So make sure that you keep your shoulders back and your head up. And you want to face the person you're talking to with your shoulders. This, along with the eye contact, shows that you're invested into the conversation, because sometimes there'll be a chair that's not set up completely faced towards them. So make sure that you position yourself to where you can directly face whoever's asking you the question. Also with this, you want to keep your chin up. This helps with eye contact, and it makes sure you're not staring through the top of your eyelids, because if you have your chin down, it can show that you're not really into the conversation. It looks more like you're getting scolded rather than you're there for an interview, showing that you can make it there with them. Also, you can mimic some social cues from your interviewer. These would be nonverbal things such as their posture and their tone of voice. This can help you follow along and show that you're further engaged subconsciously. And finally, avoid touching your mouth. This can be hard because some people are hard of hearing, and if you're covering your mouth, they can't rely on reading your lips to help them understand. Also, in some cases, some people take this as a sign of lying, and you wouldn't want anyone to ever think that you were lying during your interview. And finally, we're going to talk about staying calm. So you made it to the interview. Obviously, they have some sort of interest in you, and you should be proud of that. It's okay to take a deep breath if needed. If a question catches you off guard, there's nothing wrong with taking a pause, breathing in and out before you give your response. And finally, you need to be present in the moment. If you feel like you messed up on a question, you don't need to just be focusing on that the whole time. And you don't need to be thinking about to the future whether if you'll get the job or not. You need to be staying in the moment with the person interviewing you. This way, you can really give them your full attention and their best impression. So, those are just a couple tips that I have for in person interviews. And nextly, we're going to talk about virtual interviews that can either be Zoom or you recording yourself. So one of the most important things for this is good lighting and find a quiet place, because if you're recording yourself or you're doing yourself electronically, you can't necessarily make out people's faces if there's tons of shadows, and they might not be able to super put a face with your name. And sometimes shadows can just be unflattering on your face. And with a quiet place, this is important too, because you don't want background noise, because that can be very distracting to whoever's listening, and they'll be focused more on the background noise rather than what you're saying. Also, specifically for Zoom interviews, you need to stay attentive. It's easy to look around and get distracted or get on your phone or look above your camera during a Zoom interview, but you're missing that human interaction. So make sure you stay focused on your camera and on your screen to show that you're paying attention, because this is the closest thing that you'll have to the human interaction and what they'll be able to see of your social cues. And also with these, you still need to dress appropriately. Most people think with virtual interviews or recording themselves that they can wear whatever they want, but this is not the case. You need to follow the same tips as I gave before. When in doubt, always a suit is best for both men and women, and just judge the type of interview that you have to know how to dress appropriately. Next, we're going to discuss phone interviews. These are becoming more common, and the everyday bustle of life, it's really easy and quick to give someone a phone call. So this is important that you find a quiet place once again, because the background noise can be distracting, or they might not be able to hear you at all. And another thing specifically with phone calls is don't forget inflection. It's really easy to get into the zone of answering questions and just to have a monotone voice the whole time, because you have zero human interaction face to face with it. One way to help this is remember to smile. No one will be able to see it, but it's pretty hard to have an inflective voice when you're smiling. So this is a good tip for helping keep inflection in your voice. And over the phone specifically, make sure to speak slow and to enunciate. This way that you can be heard clearly the first time, because it could get annoying if you're mumbling and speaking so fast that no one knows what you're saying. And with a phone interview, you can even have a little bit more of an advantage. You can have your resume on hand and you can take notes throughout because they can't see what you're doing. Just make sure that you're focusing and you can answer questions quickly. But having your resume on hand is good so you can answer questions quickly about that. Finally, we're going to talk about non-traditional resumes or non-traditional interviews. This typically is if you're asked by an employer to go out to eat or get a cup of coffee, something like that, as a sort of get to know you, maybe a second interview or so on. So things to remember in this is most importantly that it is still an interview. It does not mean that you necessarily have the job yet if they've invited you to one of these. And another important tip is not to overstay your welcome because most professionals have very busy lives. And as much as some may want to, they don't have all day to stay and talk to you. So make sure to follow good social convention and take cues of when it's time to leave and don't overstay. And remember to stay professional. Sometimes in non-traditional settings, it's easy to let your guard down and to not really focus on the situation, but make sure to stay professional. Don't crack crude jokes, keep your language good, and still dress appropriately. And importantly on this is a really good time to be personable as well. You can be personable and professional at the same time. Just remember to show your good social mannerisms throughout this whole process. And by following the tips above, you'll be able to show that well. So finally, no matter what type of interview you had, there are some steps that you should follow after the interview. So the first thing that you should always do is review your notes and see how maybe you could improve next time if there's a second interview or for future reference if you don't think the interview went well at all. Also, if you're reviewing your notes, this can help you with your thank you card or thank you email. This is because you can take notes during the time and you can find something personable about each of your people that interviewed you, and you can mention this in your thank you card just as showing that you're paying attention and that you care. And lastly, make sure to keep in touch. If they give you a deadline of when they'll have the decision back, if you haven't heard back from them by then, it is okay to reach out and ask them about their decision. And this is pretty much all I had. So in summary, no matter what interview you face, just make sure you go at it confidently and keep yourself professional and be yourself and just learn from each one and keep going. Thank you.